There's too many of these buggers, Thorin. I hope you've got a plan. Aye, we're going to take out their leader, Azog. I'm gonna kill that piece of shit. How do you plan to single-handedly your way to Ravenhill?
I have a few ideas.
Lura Steel! Azog, the Defiler. Oh, wait a minute. Smaug, he's alive. Who are you? Well, fuck with me. You will burn, baby, burn. Disco Inferno.
To these memories I will hold. With your blessing I will go to turn and last to paths that lead on. And oh, where the road then takes me, I cannot.
Hello, my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to my latest movie review, where today I continue my Middle-earth reviews with the review of The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, directed by Peter Jackson and released in 2014. It is the third and final movie of the Hobbit trilogy, and it was also the sixth and final film to be released in this saga. I mean, obviously, it's the third in the actual chronology, but it was the last one to be made, so it was quite a significant film on a number of accounts. So, the Battle of the Five Armies. Well, basically, the plot of this film is as follows. It basically opens exactly where the Desolation of Smaug ended, with Smaug flying off to Lake Town to destroy it. And he does so, and then Smaug is killed by Bard, the bowman, with the black arrow that he had hidden. And then, basically, what goes on is that we see Thorin has basically succumbed to the same sickness as his grandfather. He has become obsessed with the gold and the treasure, and he has descended into madness, and he really has become quite nasty to his fellow dwarves, and he is going on this continuous struggle to find the Arkenstone, but it turns out Bilbo actually still has it, because he nabbed it in the Desolation of Smaug, and he is very uncertain about whether to give it to Thorin, but then he actually trades it to Bard and Thranduil, and then they basically offer it to him if he chooses to honour his word, like he promised in the Desolation of Smaug, and give them a share of the treasure. But Thorin refuses, and then basically, here we are. It's the Battle of the Five Armies. And that's kind of it. And then we see Azog commanding his orc army, like so orcs, elves, dwarves, men, and various other people all have this final showdown at Erebor. The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Well, this movie has certainly got a very mixed reaction as far as I can gather. I've always actually been someone who's kind of defended this movie. Now, I'm not going to say that The Battle of the Five Armies is a perfect film. It isn't. It's not perfect. And it probably isn't as good as when I first saw it. When I first saw this film, I did a review of it straight away, and I really enjoyed it, even though I didn't give it a perfect score. But looking at it now, 6 years on, and assessing it with the extended edition, I can safely say, yeah, it's good. I really like it, but it isn't perfect. For me, this is probably my second favourite of the Hobbit trilogy. I would take this over An Unexpected Journey, but I don't think this film is as good as The Desolation of Smaug, or indeed the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Basically, what we get is a humongous battle. I mean, and that's what it is. I mean, it's called The Battle of the Five Armies. Originally, the film was titled There and Back Again. When The Hobbit was going to be two movies, it was going to be An Unexpected Journey and There and Back Again, but then, having stretched The Hobbit to 3 films, this third film was very much centrally focused on the war. So I guess it sort of made sense for them to change the title, and they changed it to The Battle of the Five Armies. And yeah, I'm not surprised. And you know, it doesn't bother me too much. The battle itself is very good. I mean, it's certainly entertaining, especially with the extended edition. But I have to say, it's not anywhere near as impressive as the battles in Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's for certain. This battle is very CGI heavy. And again, sort of the same criticism again with The Hobbit is that the CGI is just too much this time. I mean, in the first two it wasn't as bad, but it was still noticeable. The CGI is still good here, but a lot of it you can really tell is CGI. This is probably the least convincing CGI of the trilogy, which is a shame. But I mean, it's good enough. It will do. But when you see the armies fighting, it doesn't have the same weight to it as the Lord of the Rings. And when we still get those massive wide shots of armies clashing with each other, but it does lack a certain weight, I would say. However, Peter Jackson makes up for this with the emotional side of the battle. He always tries to focus on the emotional cost of the battle, which I really appreciate. So we see shots of children and women dead. The orcs are killing them, and there's this one section where there's this sort of just this emotional music track playing when the battle has just sort of kicked off, and all the women and the children of the lake are dying, and it's quite sort of somber, and it's really kind of, you go, oh, this is actually kind of sad. It's sort of depressing, really, but yeah, I thought it was really effective, and it held the emotion of the story. I'm not saying that this film is on the same emotional scale of Return of the King. I mean, God no, it's not that good, but I certainly appreciate the friendship between Bilbo and Thorin, and I think that's really well done here. I think, like, you can see that Bilbo really appreciates Thorin, and they really do love each other as friends. I mean, they are really close by this point, but Bilbo knows if he tells the truth, he's going to lose Thorin as a friend, and it's really quite upsetting to see him go through that struggle. In the end, Bilbo knows that Thorin has to face up to who he is and what he's become now, and it is actually heartbreaking to see Thorin descend into this sort of this madness. Really, he's obsessed with the gold, and he's become his worst enemy. He's turned into Smaug, basically, except he's just not a dragon. They even have him say the exact same line that Smaug said in The Desolation of Smaug, where he says, "I will not part with a single coin, not one piece of it." So that was really interesting, and I think Richard Armitage gives his best performance of the trilogy. I think he really does, and the emotional sort of scenes towards the end of the film are very sad when Thorin dies. That's in the book, and I thought it was a very nice translation. I thought Peter Jackson and co did a really good job, and the acting in that scene was really powerful. I really liked that scene. It was sad, obviously, from Bilbo's perspective, but Thorin really had come, a long way, and he does redeem himself, and he has that. There's that moment where he has that vision of all the voices he's hearing in his head, and then he's looking at the gold on the floor, and he's seeing himself falling into the gold. I thought that was a really good way to represent him in his sort of mental state, and it was, I guess it was a bit abrupt the way he just sort of snapped out of it like that, but I'll let it go. It's a minor thing, but I thought that was a really powerful moment. I mean, if you want action spectacle, you are going to get that in the Battle of the Five Armies. This movie is huge. I mean, I've already talked about the battle as such, but the opening scene with Smaug attacking Lake Town is quite simply amazing. It's an amazing opening, even though some people criticize it for saying that it should have been at the end of the Desolation of Smaug. I actually disagree. I think that the Desolation of Smaug benefited from that cliffhanger ending with Smaug flying off. It held the tension. With this, it actually, it kicked off the film with a bang. It would have been boring to have the film just, begin in Erebor with the dwarves just looking for the Arkenstone. I mean, it's hardly exciting, So I think it was good to have Smaug's demise, at the beginning of this film, because then it transitioned into Thorin and his descent into madness. I think it was great. It was a great way to sort of transition. I don't mind that is at the beginning of this film. And yes, Smaug's death, I think, is really well done. It's a spectacular moment when Bard has the arrow on and he's leaning it on his son's shoulder, and he's pulling the arrow back, and then finally he lets go, and it does actually land in the spot. And yeah, Smaug gets a few lines as well at the very start of the film, so that's always good. I will say, though, this film isn't perfect. There are some criticisms I have. Like I've already mentioned about the CGI. I think the character of Alfred is overused in this film. I don't know why he's in it so much, but I guess he's meant to be some kind of comic relief character. But, I mean, again, nothing against the actor. Ryan Gage performs it really well, but He was necessary in the Desolation of Smaug, fair enough, but in the Battle of the Five Armies, I don't know why he's in this movie. I mean, okay, you could have had him at the beginning with the Master of Lake Town, because the Master of Lake Town actually dies at the start of the film. So it would have been interesting maybe if Alfred had died there as well, but yeah, and I mean, there was the funny moment when he's sort of, he puts on a dress and he's got these breasts full of gold. That was quite funny. And in the extended edition, you actually see him die. In the theatrical cut, we don't see him die. We just see him go away. But there's this scene where he's stuck in a net. I don't know how he gets there, but he's stuck in a net, and then he drops a coin, and then it sort of lands on this rock, and it slingshots Alfred into the mouth of a troll. Presumably, he just sort of suffocates. The troll actually suffocates as well, but then Alfred dies in the troll's mouth. Not quite sure how, but it's an amusing sequence nonetheless. Also, the romance. Now, I wouldn't have minded the romance in the Desolation of Smaug, presuming that it would actually lead somewhere. It doesn't. Well, I know why they did it. They wanted to make Keely's demise more powerful, but it just comes, again, it's just unnecessary. The two of them, Keely and Tariel, they do not share enough screen time together. I don't know, it just, to me, the romance is totally unnecessary, and it really doesn't work. I mean, his death is sad, yeah, I'll give it that. His death is very sad, but to be honest, it's not the most emotional moment in the film. There are other emotional moments that hit me much harder. I didn't really care about when Keely died. I thought Philly's death was much more sudden. I think that's an interesting point that Tolkien wrote in the book, that 3 of them don't make it. 3 of them actually die. 3 of the dwarves die. Thorin, Philly, and Keely. I thought that was a really interesting thing. And the way it was done in this film with Azog stabbing him, I thought that was pretty brutal, actually. And in the extended edition as well, we get to see the funeral of the 3 of them. I don't know why they didn't put it in the theatrical cut, but it's only a short little scene where they're walking around the sort of tombstones. Thorin, their bodies are lying on top, and actually Dane becomes the king of the mountain. But that was a very emotional scene. I felt quite sad there. So I think the emotional sort of tone to this film is really good. It doesn't work in every scene, but generally speaking, Peter Jackson he's got his heart in the right place. Let's just say that. I also like the return of Luke Evans as Bard. I think he's great in this film. It's probably his best performance. He gets a lot more to do, and he really starts to take control because the Master of Lake Town dies and Bard kills the dragon. So immediately everybody loves him now. So he becomes the leader of Lake Town, and we see more of his kids as well, which is nice. Also, Lee Pace as Thranduil, he continues to be very good. I think he's one of the best actors in this trilogy. I think the character of Thranduil is really good, and obviously there's a lovely moment at the end with him and Legolas where they actually reference Aragorn. I won't mention what it is, but if you've seen the movie, you'll know. But yeah, and Orlando Bloom as Legolas. Another criticism I have of this movie, he does certain things in this film that don't really make sense. Like, in the extended edition of this film, there's a moment when he hangs upside down on a bat and starts slashing loads of orcs. It's a little bit too far-fetched for me. I think it's a bit too ridiculous, if I'm going to be honest. It's a cool moment, but then you think about it, you go, physically, that just, it doesn't work, really. And also, there's a moment when he's, like, running on some rocks that are falling in midair. Everybody complains about that. It didn't really bother me that much when I first saw it, but looking at it now, yeah, it is kind of stupid. I can't deny it, but I'm prepared to forgive it because the overall experience of the film is very enjoyable. I think the film's structure is very good. Like the way that the first half of it is essentially a build-up to the huge fight, which does, admittedly, the battle does go on for quite a while, but necessarily, I mean, it is called the Battle of the Five Armies, and it is very satisfying to see Thorin and Azog have their final fight. I think that's really good on the ice. And when Thorin tricks Azog into stabbing him, and then he stabs Azog, I thought that was very well done. The character of Azog actually does something in this film. He was kind of wasted in the Desolation of Smaug, so I'm glad he got to do more in this film, and he was kind of controlling the battle from atop of the Ravenhill, and also Bolg and Legolas have another fight as well, which is good. I think the best scene in this film, though, my favourite scene in this film, well, one of my favourite scenes, is the acorn scene, when Bilbo and Thorin are having that discussion, and then he says, I picked up an acorn in Balon's garden, and I'm going to plant it in Bag End when I go home, and I thought that was lovely. I thought that was a really nice little moment between the two of them, because it was a moment where you almost thought that Thorin was going to snap out of his, you know, delusions, but no, sadly not. But it was a lovely, beautiful moment, and it also showed their friendship as well. I really liked that. But one of my other favourite scenes in this film is the scene in Dol Guldur, when Galadriel, Saruman, and Elrond go to rescue Gandalf, and they fight the 9 ghosts, well, who will become the 9 ring wraiths in The Lord of the Rings. So there's a lot of nice preludes to The Lord of the Rings, and it was a pretty cool action scene. I can't deny it was pretty amazing. And to see her confront Sauron was really good. And also Saruman's line when he says, leave Sauron to me. Well, we know all about that. And actually, as for the extended edition, probably my favourite news scene in the extended edition is the scene when Radagast gives Gandalf his staff. And I didn't realise that until I watched the film. I thought, wow, okay, so that's the staff that Gandalf takes with him into The Lord of the Rings, which I think is a really, really interesting idea, and I like that. Radagast himself doesn't really do anything in the film. He sort of turns up for like 5 minutes, and then he helps in the battle at the end. So ultimately, Radagast has been sort of an unnecessary character until that moment. So yeah, I give Peter Jackson and co the credit for doing that. Howard Shore's music score is also really good. I really love his soundtrack this time. It's probably a bit better than the Desolation of Smaug score. I also really like Billy Boyd's end title song, The Last Goodbye. I thought that was very well done. One of my other scenes that I like is when Thorin gives Bilbo the mithril vest, which then is passed on to Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. You see what I mean about the preludes? Yeah, those little references are really nicely done. And the end of the film is good. Like, I like the end of it. It's emotionally, it sort of more or less wraps up nicely. And then we get Bilbo returning home, and then we realise he's still got the ring. And I love the way the film ends with the older version of Bilbo, Ian Holm, saying the lines from The Fellowship of the Ring, and that was how it ended. I thought, oh, that was really nice, and yeah. So I think if you are a fan of these movies, you are not going to be disappointed. But pretty much what this movie is, it's a war movie. It's a big battle, and it does go on for a while. I mean, the extended cut runs for like 2 hours, 45 minutes, so it's the shortest of the three, but it still feels pretty long because there's a lot of fighting in this one. And, you know, perhaps there is a bit too much action, but, you know, I still really enjoy it for what it is. And I would probably take this over An Unexpected Journey just because there is more conflict in this film. There's more drama, more action. I mean, there's more of everything, really. I mean, the first film is a build-up. I mean, some people prefer the first one. That's fine. Each to their own. But to me, this one is probably slightly better for me. That being said, I don't think it's perfect. And I do think there are some issues that prevent it from being perfect, but overall I really do enjoy this film, and I think that it's a nice wrap up to the Hobbit trilogy. So I'm going to end this review by giving The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies an 8 out of 10. So that's it. That's The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please comment down below, let me know. I apologise for the length of this review. It's you know, it's hard to condense my thoughts about each of these films all in one. I forgot to mention, I've always loved Ian McKellen as Gandalf in these movies as well. I'll probably have more to say about him in The Lord of the Rings, but in this film, I think he's really good. Martin Freeman as well as Bilbo has been incredible in this trilogy. I really think he has nailed this character. I still think his best performance is The Desolation of Smaug, but I think that in this third film, he does give a very emotional performance, so there. So that's that. That's my reviews of the Hobbit trilogy done. So, next time, we move on to The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Woo! So that's something to look forward to. So, thank you very much all for watching, and stay tuned for my review of The Fellowship of the Ring. And until next time, I'm Mr. Tarlis11. See you soon. Bye for now.